Howdy folks! Today I'm going to walk you through installing a mains inlet just like this one down the side of your RV or camper van. I've got an old VW sat outside at the moment, so we're going to install this together in real time, and we're also going to work out the wire size together, and I'm going to show you how to terminate this to ensure that this is nice and safe to use. Let's dive straight in.
Well, howdy folks, thanks for stopping by. As I say, we're going to be looking at installing a mains inlet in the side of your camper. Now this is what one of them looks like, and we're first of all going to take it to the side of the vehicle itself. We're going to be using this as a template to draw around a little bit later on, but we just need to check the positioning. So we're going to measure it and check around the rear to make sure nothing's obstructing it and preventing it from being installed in that position. Once you're satisfied, we'll go ahead and draw around it with a Sharpie or a felt tip pen. So we're going to make our cutout with a jigsaw, and we need to make sure we're using the correct jigsaw blade. Now this one on the right here has rather large teeth and is likely to jump around like a bloody kangaroo, so we're going to throw that one away and instead use this one on the left, which is designed specifically for metal and has much finer teeth. Now for that to enter the side of the van, we're going to need to drill a little hole that's going to allow that to gain access. So I'm going to use a drill bit here that's slightly larger than the jigsaw blade itself, and I'm going to cut that little entry hole within the template. We need to ensure that we tape off the surrounding area. There's a really good chance that the foot of the jigsaw blade will scratch the exterior paintwork if you don't, even if it's got a rubberized foot, so I highly recommend you don't skip this step. Then once you're done, you can feed the jigsaw blade in and start cutting out that outline. Now my recommendation is simply just to take your time. This will allow the blade to do the majority of the work instead of you forcing it through and causing the jigsaw to jump around. And also it's going to give you a little bit of extra time just to get around those curves really nice and accurately and get a really clean cut. With our cutout complete, we can file those raw edges. That's just going to smooth them off, and then we're going to need to clear up or hoover any metal debris that could be sitting behind the wall and rusting over time. Now speaking of rust, we're also going to need to prevent those raw edges from now rusting, so I'm going to use some red oxide here. You could use some spray paint if you have that to hand, but basically we just need to cover up those edges just to help give them some longevity. Once it's all dry, we can remove the tape, and I'm going to just pop that mains inlet in place. And you should see that in all four corners there's a little screw hole. I'm just going to mark each of those off with a pen or pencil. I'm going to take a small drill bit just to drill a little pilot hole to help feed our screws in a little bit later down the line. Now we're almost at the point of actually terminating the cable itself. Now you should have some 230 volt cable already running through, but let's pause it there and just take a closer look at the inlet and the cable itself. So on the back you can see there is an entry point for the cable to run through, but there's also two entry points at the very top if that suits your installation better. If you do need to use the one on the rear, just take a Stanley knife and cut it out, but be sure to feed the cable through first before terminating the cables, otherwise you're going to have to undo them later on and then refeed that back plate through. Now speaking of the cable, I'm using Arctic grade flexible cable. Now it's really important that it is flexible cable and not rigid household cable. The reason being is there are ongoing vibrations in a van which would damage and degrade rigid cable. Also important that we use Arctic grade because the likelihood is your camper is going to go below freezing temperatures, and Arctic grade cable will operate at minus 40 degrees centigrade. Now the yellow is generally used for 110 volt applications and the blue is for 230 volt, but you can use whichever. And in terms of sizing the cable, 1.5mm square cable will handle an output of 16 amps, which is really ideal for most circumstances given that campsites generally only give a maximum output of 16 amps. If you do need more though, 2.5mm square cable will give 25 amps. I'll leave a link in the description for this exact cable that I'm using. Next we need to remove that outer piece of insulation, so going about 10 centimeters down from the end, I'm just going to lightly score it with a pair of wire cutters rather than a Stanley knife, just because it's a little safer. And I just want to make sure that I don't nick those three cables that are underneath. So just work the wire cutters round and then have a really good go at just manhandling and pulling that piece of insulation off. Once that's done, take a really close inspection of those cables. If you have nicked the insulation underneath, you're going to need to cut that back and start again. But if you're happy, we can then take an automatic pair of wire strippers, like this pair here. And these wire strippers are great because they will strip just the right amount off the ends for terminating this cable, and they also won't damage the copper strands underneath, leaving you with a cable that's actually not capable of carrying the capacity it's intended for anymore. I'll leave a link for that as well in the description, but once you've done all 3 cables, we can then look at terminating it. So if you didn't know already, the brown cable is the live cable, and that will be installed on the left. The blue cable, which I like to think of as a calm neutral colour, is the neutral cable, which will be installed on the right, and the green and yellow cable is the earth cable, which will be installed on the bottom there. Now there is a little clip that can hold the cabling in place. We're just going to move that to one side. And then I'm going to take a screwdriver and just release all of those terminals. Once that's done, we can actually terminate the cable itself. So I'm going to push that all the way to the very end, ensuring that none of the copper strands are showing. I'm just going to hand tighten it with a screwdriver. You don't want to over tighten it that you damage the cable, but obviously you want to tighten it enough so that the cabling isn't loose. Now you could do a little pull test afterwards just to make sure that is secure. Happy days. Now we can secure that cable to the mains inlet itself. And as you can see from this close-up here, there are no copper strands showing. That ensures that it is safe and fit for purpose, and that it is insulated all the way to the back of the mains inlet. Now we can pop the back on. That will just clip into place. And now we can head back to the van, and I can show you it being done in situ. Just to note, there is a little weather gasket that's important not to miss. So you just place that between the mains inlet and the van wall itself, and that's just going to help seal the mains inlet and prevent any water ingress. Now I am going to add a little bit of sealant a little bit later on, but that is optional, you don't have to do so. So with everything now terminated, I'm just going to pop my 4 screws in. I'm going to use a screwdriver to hand tighten this just to make sure I don't tear out those pilot holes. And you could say that's now done. Now as an optional thing, I like to add a bit of sealant all the way around the edges just to make sure that is 100% waterproof. I'm using some Sikaflex 522 for this application, just running my finger down just to give a nice clean finish. And there we have it, we've now installed a mains inlet. So looking at the other end of the cable, you are going to need to terminate that at the relevant protection, so an RCD and some MCBs, and you're going to need to test those sockets before they're put to use. So you can either do that yourself, or you can ask a qualified electrician to do so. Now we are going to be working on this VW over the next few months. It's going to have a huge 600 watt solar array installed and a huge off-grid system. So if you fancy learning more about electrics, perhaps stay in touch, subscribe to the channel, and we'll keep you posted with some more videos as and when they come out. But anyway, thank you very much for watching, and hopefully we'll catch you on another video soon.